Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where American love stories come alive, not just to entertain, but to remind us that even broken hearts can find their way home. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone walk back into your life looking stronger, calmer, and completely untouchable, while you still hadn't healed from what you did to them? Have you ever stood frozen in place? Because the person you thought would be shattered without you just walked in and proved they never needed you to survive. That's where this story begins. Not with a kiss, not with a fight, but with silence in the middle of a hallway that had seen power deals, press conferences, and heartbreaks no one dared speak of. It started with the sound of elevator doors sliding open, and Joran Voss, CEO of Voss and Ryden, didn't even bother to look up from his phone. He was pacing through notifications, calendar invites, investor updates. A bland reminder about a branding consultant arriving for a 10 a.m. pitch. He barely registered it. But when he did finally glance up, his entire world tilted. The phone nearly slipped from his hand. There she was, Amira. Not the Amira from 2 years ago. Not the young executive with quiet brilliance and soft eyes who used to stay after hours and draw entire campaigns on glass boards in that corner conference room. No, this woman was different. Tailored slate grey suit, tablet in hand. Her curls were pinned up in a simple knot, and there wasn't a single ounce of hesitation in her step. She walked with the kind of poise that didn't beg attention. It commanded it. "Mr. Voss," she said. A polite nod, nothing more. Then she turned to his assistant. "Conference room C, correct?" Rian blinked, speechless. She only nodded. Amira walked past Joran like she hadn't once held his secrets, like she hadn't once whispered promises into the silence of his penthouse, like she didn't know the taste of his name or the weight of his lies. Joran didn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. She was supposed to be gone. No goodbye, no return, no trace. But now, here she was, walking through the same hallways that once silenced her, wearing the same calm expression she wore the day she packed her things and left, without a word. He turned to Rian. "You knew?" he asked under his breath. Rian looked uneasy. The board brought in a firm, AMR Strategies. They didn't say who the founder was. I didn't either. Joran stepped toward the boardroom, but the door was already closing behind her. Inside, he could hear her voice. Clear, calm, professional. "Let's begin," she said. "I've reviewed Voss and Ryden's public sentiment trends. You have visibility, not trust. You have reach, not connection. People know your products, but they don't believe your purpose." Click. Next slide. The market doesn't buy what you do. It buys why you do it. And right now, your why is missing. The room was silent. Even the most skeptical board members leaned in. Joran stood outside the door, every muscle tight, every word slicing through him like ice. Amira had once told him that branding was about emotion, not design. That every company had a beating heart. The job was to find it and teach the world how to listen. He hadn't listened. Not when it counted. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Amira stepped out, holding a slim portfolio and a folded copy of the approved proposal. She didn't even glance at him. "Congratulations," she said evenly. "Your team made the right call." "That's not why he began. "I'm here for work, Joran. Nothing more." Then she walked away, heels echoing against polished marble, leaving him standing exactly where she found him. Speechless. And for the first time in years, he felt something close to regret. He didn't sleep that night. His apartment, once a place of status, luxury, and power, suddenly felt like a waiting room filled with things that didn't matter. He sat in the dark, staring at the city skyline through 12-foot windows, asking himself the same question over and over. Why didn't I fight for her? The answer came just as quickly. Because power was easier to defend than vulnerability. Because breaking something in silence always feels cleaner than explaining your guilt. Because Alina Ryden's family had offered him an empire, and he took it, even though it cost him everything worth keeping. And now, the woman he threw away had come back, not to plead, not to haunt, but to win. Without him. The next morning, she was in the break lounge reviewing documents with a junior designer. Joran paused in the doorway. There was no audience, no cameras, nothing performative. Amira was explaining something about color psychology, how every shade needed a purpose. Her tone was measured, her advice firm. She hadn't changed, but she had evolved. She caught his gaze, paused, and then looked back to her designer like she hadn't seen him at all. This wasn't a story about revenge. Amira wasn't here to destroy him. She was here to do the work. She didn't need to win him back. She'd already won herself back. And that was what shook him the most. The conference room smelled like polished wood and espresso, sleek, sterile, expensive. It matched the rest of Voss and Ryden, efficient, cold, obsessively curated. Amira stood near the front, tablet in hand, waiting while the board trickled in. She didn't check her phone. She didn't pace. She didn't smile. She simply stood still. The kind of stillness that made powerful people lean forward. Joran entered last. He kept his expression unreadable, adjusted his cufflinks, and nodded to the room. Like this wasn't the most uncomfortable moment of his professional life. He sat at the head of the table, directly across from her. She didn't look at him. "Let's begin," she said. A single tap, and the first slide filled the screen. The world doesn't care how big your company is. It cares how you make people feel. The room fell silent. "This is the current perception of Voss and Ryden," Amira continued, gesturing. "To the next slide, consumer reviews, social sentiment graphs, clipped headlines. You're respected, but not trusted, known, but not beloved. What you've built is a fortress. What you need is a bridge." She moved with precision. Every word cut clean, every slide told a story. She wasn't performing. She was delivering. Joran, for all his practice control, could barely keep his focus off her face. Her cadence hadn't changed, still confident, still restrained, but it was sharper now, hardened. She spoke about campaigns that failed, about emotional disconnect, about loyalty being more than a product cycle. At one point, someone from the finance team interrupted, "But our numbers have been stable." Amira's smile was soft, but her response sliced deep. Stability isn't loyalty. A customer who buys from you because they have to will leave the moment someone makes them feel seen. The board murmured. Joran swallowed. She moved to case studies, brands that reinvented themselves not through logos, but through honesty, vulnerability, human-centered messaging. And then she turned to Joran. She didn't speak to him directly, but the slide she presented said everything. When the public sees silence where there should be purpose, they start writing the story for you. Joran didn't blink, but every word landed. Amira closed her tablet and stepped back. "That's my pitch," she said simply. "AMR Strategies doesn't offer reinvention. We offer reflection. We help you sound like who you are, not who you're trying to impress." Silence. Then one board member clapped. Another followed. The VP of Global Outreach stood. "Brilliant. Approve the contract. Let's get started." Amira nodded once and began packing up her materials. Everyone began filing out, congratulating, commenting, tossing polite praise her way. Joran stayed seated. She didn't look in his direction until she reached the door. He stood slowly. "Amira." She paused, just slightly. He took a breath. That was remarkable. She met his eyes. No flicker of emotion, not hate, not warmth. "Congratulations," she said quietly. "Your board made the right decision." He took a step forward. "That's not why I called your name." She tilted her head, waiting. But she didn't lower her walls. "I'm here for work, Joran. Nothing more." And then she turned and walked out of the room, leaving him in a silence that felt louder than anything she'd ever said. Later that day, he sat in his office, blinds half drawn, staring at the old campaign photos on the wall. One of them was hers. Not her face, just her handwriting on a whiteboard in the background. A tiny memory embedded in the firm's biggest launch 5 years ago. He remembered the night they'd pulled an all-nighter for that pitch. She'd brought granola bars. He'd ordered Chinese. They'd argued over font sizes, and when she fell asleep on the couch, he'd watched her for nearly 10 minutes before covering her with his jacket. Back then, he told himself he didn't believe in office romances. And yet, she made him feel something different. Not excited, not obsessed, safe. That evening, his assistant Rian entered the office. "She's booked for 3 workshops next week," she said, "and she's requested to work independently. She doesn't want a direct liaison." Joran looked up. "She said that. She didn't have to." Rian hesitated before adding, "She doesn't owe you kindness, but I think she still deserves your honesty." He looked away. "She's not the same." "No, she's better," Rian said softly. "And that's probably what's tearing you up." Then she left, and Joran sat in the dark with one thought looping through his mind. She didn't ask for an apology. She asked for space. And for once, he didn't know how to fix what he'd broken. That night, he opened a blank email. Typed, deleted, typed again. Subject, just, "Talk? Amira, I don't want to interfere with your work, but I also can't pretend the past didn't happen. If there's ever a moment where you want to talk, not as CEO and consultant, just as us, I'm here. Joran." He hovered over send, paused, then clicked it anyway. She read it the next morning, didn't reply. She printed the updated brand message outline, marked it with 3 clean corrections, and handed it to his assistant. Professional, precise, cold. But Joran stared at the document for 5 minutes longer than necessary, because her handwriting still hadn't changed, and neither had the ache he thought he buried. Amira sat in the back of the Uber, watching the city rush past her window. Seattle was colder now, or maybe she just remembered it being warmer, back when she was in love, and everything felt like possibility. She leaned her head back, closed her eyes, and exhaled slowly. She hadn't meant to return. Not to the company, not to the building, and especially not to him. But here she was, and every step she took inside Voss and Ryden felt like walking through the ruins of a house she'd once built with her own hands. She hadn't come back for closure. She came because Amma was growing, and she needed the contract. Because her name was finally becoming something solid, something independent, something his shadow couldn't touch. Still, she hadn't expected the elevator to open and reveal Joran standing there like a man caught in his own lie. He hadn't changed much. Still sharp, still perfectly put together. But his eyes, they carried something new, like he finally understood the cost of what he'd done. And yet, she didn't flinch, didn't tremble, didn't give him anything to hold on to. That was her power now. Her phone buzzed. A text from her therapist. "Breathe before the emotion becomes a response. Your peace is still yours." Amira smiled faintly. She was fine. Truly. But she'd be lying if she said it didn't sting a little, seeing the man, who shattered her trust, act like she was the surprise in the room. The truth was, she had loved him. Not in the loud, needy way. In the quiet, everyday kind of way. The kind where she remembered his coffee order better than her own. Where she learned to leave the lights dim in his office because it calmed his migraines. The kind of love that builds routines without needing a label. But love that goes unspoken, dies in silence. That night she sat in her apartment, bare feet tucked under her, a candle flickering on the windowsill. She pulled out an old folder labeled Voss Concepts. It was the only file she hadn't deleted after she left. Inside were early drafts of their first brand collaboration, handwritten notes, from brainstorming sessions, and a photo. One single photo she forgot was there. It was blurry, taken on her phone. Joran leaning over a whiteboard, smiling. Not for the camera, just existing. She hadn't meant to capture it, but she'd kept it anyway. She stared at it for a long time, then placed it face down on the table. Some memories didn't need deleting. They needed redefining. The next morning, she arrived at Voss and Ryden 15 minutes early. That was always her thing. A few employees stared, some out of curiosity, others with vague recognition. She didn't mind. She wasn't here to make friends or enemies. She was here to finish what she started, herself. As she walked through the halls, she noticed something. Joran wasn't in the office yet. It was unlike him. He was usually the first one in. She entered the strategy room, set up her tablet, and began reviewing the updated design drafts. Alone, she worked faster, cleaner, until a voice interrupted her focus. "Need help with those?" She looked up. It wasn't Joran. It was Rian, his assistant. "No help needed," Amira said, smiling politely. Rian walked in anyway. "Just wanted to say, you were brilliant yesterday." Amira gave a small nod. "Thank you." "And also," Rian added, "he's not the same." Amira's smile faded. "Does that matter?" Rian shrugged. "Maybe. Maybe not. But he's not sleeping. Barely eating. I haven't seen him this unguarded in years." "That's between him and his mirror," Amira said flatly. Rian nodded. "Fair." Then she paused at the door. "But if you ever want to know what regret looks like, it's sitting in his office every day, staring at his own decisions." An hour later, Joran walked in. Late. He looked tired, like his suit was wearing him. He didn't speak, just passed her on the way to the front of the room, dropped a printed version of her pitch review on the table, and sat. She didn't thank him. He didn't expect her to. But she did notice something. His watch was different. He used to wear a sleek black one with a steel band. Now it was simpler. Brown leather. She wondered if he changed it because the other one reminded him of the man he used to be, or the woman who used to watch him wear it. By noon, the room was full. Brand managers, legal, 2 board members. Amira presented a customer story initiative. Emotional hooks, story-based testimonials, turning Voss and Ryden from a brand into a voice. Every head nodded. Every eye followed. Except one. Joran watched her, not to critique, not to control, but as if trying to understand the woman he once thought was just quiet. He had no idea how loud she'd become without him. Later that evening, Amira sat in the cafe below her apartment building, sipping green tea, reviewing notes. Across from her, her best friend Yari scrolled through the notes she sent earlier. "He emailed you?" Amira shrugged. "Yes." "And you replied?" "No." Yari leaned forward. "Girl, I'm not here to reopen anything," Amira said firmly. "He made his choices. I made mine. But if part of you wants to answer..." Amira looked out the window. "Then that part of me still doesn't trust him." A pause. Then she added, softer, "And I don't want to be the woman who forgets how long it took to rebuild herself." Yari reached across the table, squeezed her hand. "Then don't go back. Let him come forward. Let him do the work." Amira smiled. "He won't. Then he'll lose twice." That night, Joran drafted another message. Didn't send it. He opened her first rebranding blueprint again, and just stared at the margins where she still scribbled in pen. His fingers hovered. He wanted to call, apologize, ask for a coffee, start again. But he didn't. Because for the first time, he wasn't sure if she'd even want the man he was trying to become. It started with the smallest shift. A door held open a second longer. A shared glance in a meeting. A comment he didn't interrupt. Joran wasn't trying to charm Amira. He didn't crack jokes, didn't linger near her desk, didn't offer compliments that sounded like regrets in disguise. He just changed. He listened more. He corrected his team less. He stopped using words like ownership and started using words like value and impact. And Amira noticed, not with her face, but in the way her jaw stopped tightening when he spoke, in how she stopped bracing for him to undermine her, in how he paused before responding to her slides, like he finally saw the strategy and the woman behind it. It was a Wednesday afternoon when she found the first clue that he was trying. She walked into the strategy lounge and saw the music playlist open on the shared tablet. It was hers, the one she used to play during late-night work sprints. A blend of acoustic, soul, and soft instrumentals. Nothing dramatic, just intentional. She tapped the screen. It had been edited. 2 new tracks at the top, both calm, introspective, slightly nostalgic. She didn't smile, but she didn't stop it from playing either. She just opened her tablet and kept working. The next day, he brought her tea, didn't say anything, just placed it beside her laptop and left. She stared at the cup for a full minute. Same flavor she used to drink, rare, minted jasmine with a citrus base. Only one place in the city stocked it. She took a sip and kept writing. At the end of the week, they presented together. First time in 2 years. It was a high-stakes meeting. 3 international clients on the call. New messaging to approve. High-level feedback to navigate. They were a perfect team. She spoke first. He followed with data. She translated numbers into emotions. He handled objections. They flowed like they never fell apart. When the presentation ended, one client said, "You two have worked together a long time, haven't you?" Amira hesitated. Joran said, "We've been in the same room before, but now we hear each other." She didn't correct him. She also didn't look away. Later, as they packed up, "You didn't have to bring the tea," she said quietly. Joran zipped his laptop sleeve. "I remembered. I'm not the same woman, Joran." He looked at her. "I know, and I'm not the man who thought silence was safer than honesty." She blinked. That caught her off guard. He stepped back. No pressure. Just, "Thank you for today." Then he left. And for the first time, Amira stood still, not because she was afraid, but because she was conflicted. That weekend, she went to her favorite bookstore. It was the only place in the city where she could breathe without thinking. She grabbed a memoir, sat in the corner chair, opened to page 1, but her eyes didn't move past the first sentence. All she saw was him, Joran, not the man who broke her, but the man who was now holding doors open, playing her music, drinking black coffee in silence while letting her lead the meetings. She wasn't falling, but she was noticing. Yari called later that night. "How's the war?" Amira smiled. "No war, just truce." "You ready to let him in?" "I don't trust him yet. Do you want to?" That question echoed, not because she didn't know the answer, but because she wasn't sure if wanting it was a weakness or a warning. Monday morning, Amira walked into the office and stopped at her desk. A single envelope sat there, her name, handwritten. Inside, an old photo. It was a copy of one she didn't even know he kept. The photo of her sketching on the glass board during their first launch campaign. Hair wild, sleeves rolled, focused. He wasn't in the frame, but his reflection was. Behind it, a note. "I never saw how bright you were. I just stood there, thinking you'd always be near me. That was my mistake. Joran." She folded the paper, placed it in her bag, and walked to her meeting. Still no reply. Still no decision. But inside her chest, something soft was waking up again. Not trust, not love, but space. And space can be dangerous when it makes room for hope. If you've ever had someone break your heart, only to return a version of themselves you barely recognized, would you open the door again? Would you even want to? Drop a below and tell us how you'd handle it. And if stories like this make you feel seen, heard, or even just understood, subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories. We're building a space where healing and honesty are part of every story. It started with coffee, not the dramatic kind, no spilled cups, no romantic sparks in crowded elevators. It started with 2 mugs, 1 glass board, and a project deadline nobody wanted. They had been assigned to build a full product relaunch campaign for one of Voss and Ryden's underperforming branches. Everyone else passed the work off like a cold plate. Only Amira and Joran leaned into it. She brought the research. He brought the vision. And when she spoke, he stopped talking. "You're quiet," he said once, when they were 6 hours into back-to-back strategy sessions. "I think before I talk," she said simply. He'd smiled. "That's rare in this building." From there, things moved in subtle layers. Not flirting, just presence. She started showing up early, not because she wanted to see him, but because she didn't want to miss the rare chance to work without interruption. He started staying late, not for her, just because she worked better than anyone he'd hired in the last 5 years, or so he told himself. The first night they stayed past 10, he ordered dinner without asking. "I don't eat shrimp," she said, reading the receipt. "Noted," he replied, sliding his portion her way. "You can have the rice." "I'm fasting anyway." "Fasting?" "For clarity," he said, half smirking. "When I'm too full, I talk too much." She laughed softly. "You talk enough already." It was the first time she let her guard down, and it cracked something in him. Days became weeks. They never touched, never crossed lines. But things were happening. The way he stopped correcting her slides. The way she stayed after meetings to challenge his language. Don't say we're building solutions. Say we're solving real-world problems. The way he started saying we instead of I when addressing the team. Their rhythm was quiet, unannounced, but it was there. One night, he watched her draw messaging angles on the whiteboard, her sleeves rolled up, her curls falling into her eyes. He said nothing, but when she left the room, he added a sticky note to her draft. "This direction, it's not just smart, it's brave." She saw it the next morning, didn't mention it, but she kept it. By the second month, they stopped pretending their connection was purely collaborative. Still, nothing was said. Not until that rooftop night. It was during the company's fall mixer. The entire C-suite was on the top floor of a hotel, mingling over overpriced wine. Amira wasn't going to go, but Rian handed her a glass and said, "You should be seen." So she went, stood near the back, sipping quietly. Joran approached without a word, his suit jacket open, no tie. "You don't like parties," he said. "You don't either." They stood together for a long time, watching the city glow below them. "I don't usually mix business and personal," he said finally. "I don't usually stay past midnight," she replied. But they both did. That night, nothing happened. No kisses, no confessions, just a closeness neither could explain. When she walked away, he watched her like she was a story he'd just begun reading and didn't want to put down. The first time they kissed, it wasn't in the office. It was after she'd sent him a branding memo he called Flawless. He showed up at her apartment with a bottle of wine and said, "I needed to say thank you, and I didn't want to email it." She stood there in jeans and a t-shirt, barefoot, blinking. Then she stepped aside. He didn't rush, didn't assume. They talked for 2 hours, on her couch over hummus and crackers, laughing about how they both hated networking. And when she stood to clear the table, he reached for her hand. She looked at him, then leaned in, soft, unhurried, like they both knew something fragile had been building, and they were ready to touch it without breaking it. Their romance didn't explode. It bloomed. Quietly, secretly. Late nights became normal. Inside jokes became sacred. He kept her name out of meetings. She kept his out of her reports. They were smart, careful, but not immune. What broke it wasn't scandal. It was strategy. Alina Ryden's father threatened to pull his $30 million investment unless Joran settled down with someone that came from the same ecosystem. Amira didn't know any of this. She walked into work one Monday and saw the headline. Voss and Ryden announces engagement between CEO Joran Voss and Alina Ryden. No mention of internal restructuring. No warning. Just a press release sent at 6 a.m. He hadn't texted, hadn't called, hadn't even looked at her since Friday. She waited for him to explain. He didn't. She waited for him to find her. He didn't. By 4 p.m. her desk was cleared. By 5:30 she was gone. By 7 p.m. she'd blocked his number. She cried once. On the floor of her apartment, curled around a half-eaten sandwich, still wearing her office shoes. Not because he left, because he never said goodbye. Joran stood by the window of his penthouse that morning, watching the clouds hang low over the Seattle skyline. He hadn't slept. The press release was already live. Alina Ryden was trending. And Amira hadn't texted, hadn't called, hadn't shown up to work. She knew. Of course she knew. And still, he said nothing. Not because he didn't care, because the truth, at the time, felt like admitting he'd never been in control. The day before the release went out, his board cornered him in the executive suite. Alina's father, Mitchell Ryden, had made his terms clear: merge their business and personal interests or the deal was off. Mitchell was a kingmaker, the kind of man who didn't invest unless his last name was stitched into the next 10 years of the company. Joran had argued. Alina had watched, saying nothing, and the board reminded him he was still replaceable. That's the problem with building a legacy through other people's money. It's never really yours. That night, Joran sat in his car across from Amira's apartment. He had planned to go inside, to explain, to say this is political, it's business, it doesn't change what I feel for you. But what could he offer? A secret? A love story buried beneath a brand? She deserved better than stolen hours and public shame, so he didn't knock. He drove away. The next morning, the press release dropped. By noon, she was gone. No confrontation, no scene, just gone. When Rian told him she'd cleaned out her desk, all he said was, "Okay." But when he got home that night, he sat at his kitchen table in the dark, staring at nothing, and whispered her name once. Amira. And the silence that answered. It sounded like grief. He thought about messaging her. He even drafted one. "I never wanted this. I didn't know how to keep you and keep the company. I failed both." He deleted it, because he wasn't sure she'd read it. And worse, he wasn't sure if she should. Over the next few weeks, Joran became more mechanical. Meetings, sign-offs, quarterly reviews. He showed up. He nodded. He spoke when spoken to. But he wasn't there. The office could feel it. He became colder, less forgiving, quiet, in the worst way. Alina noticed. "You're not smiling," she said at one of the investor luncheons. "I'm working," he replied. She laughed. "Don't worry, this won't be forever." He nodded. But the knot in his chest said otherwise. He never touched her, not once. Alina tried. She invited him to dinners, events, trips. But every time she reached out, he offered polite excuses, until she finally said, "You're not even pretending anymore." And Joran said nothing. Because she was right. They broke off the engagement 6 months later. No drama, just an agreement. Alina took her father's name off the expansion deal. Joran kept the company intact, but at a cost no balance sheet could capture. One night, alone in his condo, he pulled out the last printed version of the first brand campaign Amira ever worked on. Her notes were still in the margins. Purple ink, slanted cursive, arrows everywhere. She had this way of rewriting headlines like poetry. Don't say disrupt, say reimagine. Don't speak to investors, speak to people. She had understood the heart of the company better than he ever had. Because she had a heart. He had a playbook. Rian tried to talk to him once. "You could have explained," she said gently. Joran didn't look up from his laptop. She wouldn't have stayed. She might have left anyway. "But at least you would have said something real." He rubbed his eyes. She was real. Everything else was noise. Then why did you choose the noise? Because it was louder. Because it felt safer. Because love doesn't come with spreadsheets and silence does. But he didn't say any of that. He just nodded, once. And Rian walked away. A year passed. Then another. He heard whispers about AMR strategies, clean work, fierce leadership, thoughtful storytelling. He never saw Amira's name attached. But he knew it was her. The tone, the angles, the restraint. She was rising, quietly, on her own terms. And he let her, not out of respect, out of shame. So when her name appeared on the Monday schedule, under AMR brand strategy presentation, his hands actually trembled. He told himself it wouldn't be her. But when the elevator opened, and she stepped out in that slate grey suit, calm and composed, like nothing had touched her, he froze. His first instinct was to apologize. His second was to pretend. He did neither. He just watched her walk past like she didn't still live in the space behind his ribs. And when she said, Mr. Voss, without blinking, when she turned to Rian and said, "Conference room C." Without hesitation, he realized something that landed like a stone. She didn't need him to hurt. She needed him to see what he lost. Later that night, when the building was empty and the offices were dark, Joran stood in the break room where she once made tea. He held her old cup, the one she always rinsed and reused. Still had a faint chip on the rim. He didn't cry, but he sat on the counter for nearly an hour, gripping porcelain like it could rewind time, and whispered, "I'm sorry," into a room that didn't echo. Monday came with rain, the kind that clung to windows and turned the city into a quiet blur. Amira stood by the office window, sipping from a paper cup, watching droplets snake down the glass. She wasn't thinking of branding angles or strategy decks. She was thinking about the man sitting alone behind the glass wall across the hall. Joran hadn't spoken to her in 3 days. No emails, no notes, no casual drop-ins. But she felt him. Every time she walked past his office, his eyes followed. Not with hunger, not with guilt, with something else. A question, a quiet asking. But no pressure, and it was starting to get under her skin. That morning she arrived earlier than usual. She liked getting in before the world had sharpened its noise. To her surprise, a small paper bag was sitting on her desk. No note, no branding, just folded carefully. Inside, a lemon lavender muffin from a bakery that only opened 3 days a week, halfway across the city. The one she used to walk to on Saturdays. The one he once said smelled like her, soft and sharp at the same time. She stared at it for a long time. Then she ate it, and told no one. Later that day, they had a cross-department meeting on tone and campaign voice. He let her lead, didn't interrupt, didn't dominate. Even when the room turned to him for direction, he nodded toward her. "I defer to Amira," he said. "She understands the heart of this better than I do." The team blinked. A few side-eyed each other. It wasn't like him. Amira didn't react outwardly. But inside, a crack formed, just a hairline, and the light started pressing through. That afternoon, she found herself typing his name into her search bar, not out of longing, out of curiosity. She wanted to see if anyone else noticed the shift. He'd been quieter in the media lately, less on panels, fewer statements to the press. But his personal blog had one new post, a short entry, unlisted but live. Leadership is not about proving power. It's about taking responsibility when no one is asking you to. I once lost someone who taught me that. I never told her. I hope she knows. Amira closed the browser. Her hands trembled for 3 seconds. Then she got back to work. The next day, she dropped off a revised campaign script at his desk. He wasn't there. But she noticed something pinned to the wall behind his monitor. Her handwriting, one of her original brand statements from their first year working together. Say it simply. Say it soulfully. Say it like a person who cares. She remembered writing it on a yellow sticky note. Now it was laminated, framed, still centered, still alive. She backed out of the room slowly, feeling a quiet ache crawl up her throat. That evening, Joran knocked on her open office door. She didn't look up. "Have a minute?" he asked. She clicked her laptop shut. "If it's about the rollout timeline, I already sent the—" "It's not." She leaned back in her chair, waiting. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "And I won't insult you by pretending one muffin or a framed sticky note makes up for anything." She raised an eyebrow. "So this is the self-awareness tour?" He smiled faintly. "No, just the truth." He stepped inside, careful not to close the door. "I lied to myself about a lot of things, but mostly about thinking silence would protect you." She didn't respond. He added, "If I could go back, I wouldn't just say goodbye. I'd say thank you for making me better. Even if I didn't deserve it." Amira let that hang, then asked, softly, "What makes you think you deserve my respect now?" He didn't blink. "I don't," she nodded once. "Good." Then she stood, grabbed her bag, and walked past him, her shoulder brushing his arm, but not pushing him away. That night, she stood in her kitchen with her phone in her hand, typed his name, deleted it, typed again, stopped. She wasn't confused. She was conflicted, because the man who once broke her was now doing something even harder than apologizing. He was changing, without asking her to notice. And somehow, that unsettled her more than any grand speech ever could. The next day, they had to review final campaign visuals, side by side, for 2 hours. He didn't speak unnecessarily. She didn't deflect. At one point, their fingers touched, reaching for the same printed draft. Neither pulled away instantly, but neither lingered. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't intimate. It was human. After the meeting, she walked out into the main hallway. Rian intercepted her. "Can I say something without overstepping?" Amira tilted her head. Rian continued, "I think he's trying to heal without using you as a bandage." Amira blinked. Rian added, "I've worked for him for 5 years, and I've never seen him more uncertain. That used to be scary. Now, it's the first time he seems honest." Amira didn't reply, but something shifted in her face. The kind of softness that comes when resistance starts to give way to reflection. That night, she replayed Rian's words over and over. Heal without using you as a bandage. She opened the drawer where she'd placed the muffin bag. It was empty now, just crumbs. But somehow, it felt like the beginning of something. Not a love story, but a reintroduction. The rain hit hard by 5:40 p.m. Seattle turned moody. Slick streets, fogged windows, that slow hum of tires against pavement that made the whole city feel like it was holding its breath. Amira waited in the elevator lobby, her tablet tucked under one arm, umbrella unopened at her side. Most of the office had already emptied. Friday nights made people rush. But she liked leaving last. Fewer eyes, fewer conversations. She tapped her phone, reading a quick message from her project lead. Approval timelines were ahead of schedule. The rebrand was working. Everything was working. Except the part of her that didn't feel as numb anymore. The elevator dinged. She stepped in. A few seconds later, just as the doors were closing, a hand stopped them. Joran. He stepped in without a word, tie loosened, coat folded over one arm. It was just them. The doors sealed shut, and the silence was back. He stood at the opposite side, hands in his pockets, not looking at her, but clearly aware. She didn't move. Floor 23 lit up, then 22, then nothing. The lights flickered. The elevator jerked slightly, then stopped. Complete stillness. She turned slowly. "You've got to be kidding me." Joran blinked. "We just had it serviced." She tapped the emergency button. The soft voice of the building system kicked in. "Technical issue detected. Please remain calm. Elevator will resume shortly." Of course. He stepped back and leaned against the wall. "You good?" "I'm not claustrophobic, if that's what you're asking." "Wasn't." She crossed her arms, staring at the glowing button panel. "I hate silence," she muttered. "Didn't used to," he said softly. She looked at him. "That was before silence became the way you walked away." He didn't flinch. "You're right." She blinked. Not because he admitted it, but because he didn't defend it. "I used to think saying nothing protected people," he added. She scoffed. "You thought it protected you?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah. I did." The elevator was quiet again, save for the occasional creak of the system trying to restart. Then he spoke again. "Do you remember the day we pitched the Cascade project?" She didn't respond. "We worked until midnight. You wore that navy sweater with the thumb holes. The sleeves kept falling over your hands. You pushed them up 13 times. She blinked. "You counted?" "Yeah, I did." Silence. "I remember how you edited the final slide 30 seconds before the client joined the call," he added. "I remember thinking, she doesn't even know how brilliant she is." But Amira's voice dropped. "You didn't act like someone who remembered." "I know." A beat. Then she whispered, "Why didn't you fight for me?" It was a real question, a raw one. Joran inhaled slowly. I thought I couldn't have both, you and the company, and I was too afraid of losing everything. So I chose what I thought was safer. You chose what was public, she said. Yes, you chose power. I chose fear, he said, and called it power. For the first time, she looked him full in the face, and saw it. The regret wasn't new, but the ownership was. She sat down on the elevator bench, tablet still in her lap. Her voice softened. Do you know what broke me? He shook his head. It wasn't the engagement news. It wasn't even the silence after. It was waking up one morning, realizing I built everything around a man who wouldn't even say goodbye. His jaw tensed, but he didn't interrupt. I kept thinking, if I mattered, he would have at least said it was over. You did matter, he said. More than anything. Then why did you let me leave like a mistake? He lowered his head. Because I was one. The lights blinked again. The elevator groaned. Floor 21 lit up. Still no movement. She leaned back against the wall. You're saying the right things now, she said. But do you even know why? Yes. Why? Because you're the only person I ever respected enough to regret losing. She exhaled. Regret doesn't fix things, Joran. I know. He stepped closer, but not too close. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just asking to show you who I am now. If that's not enough, I'll leave you alone after the campaign. Amira studied him for a long time, then said quietly, You're better now, I see it, but I don't know if that's about me or because you lost me. It's both. At least he was honest. The elevator buzzed again. Movement. Floor 20. They were moving. But the space between them didn't close. Amira stood slowly. Don't say anything else, she said. Not tonight. He nodded. Okay. When the doors opened, they stepped out into the quiet lobby. They walked side by side to the exit. Rain still poured. She opened her umbrella. Turned. He stood under the awning, watching the rain fall. Good night, Joran. He looked at her. Not as a CEO, not as a mistake. As the woman he was still trying to unbreak. Good night, Amira. And she walked into the rain alone. But for the first time since she came back, she didn't feel like the one who left something behind. Amira sat at her desk Monday morning, staring at the fresh campaign data spread across her screen. Client feedback was glowing. Social engagement up. Conversion metrics rising faster than projected. Internally, the board called it a strategic revival. But Amira wasn't smiling. Not because the numbers didn't matter, but because the feeling inside her didn't match the success on the screen. She leaned back in her chair and took a slow breath. This rebrand had been more than a contract. It had been a return to a battlefield, one she wasn't sure she'd ever step into again. But she had. And now, the fight wasn't between her and the company. It was between her and herself. Later that morning, she joined a review meeting with the design team. Joran didn't speak much. He sat 2 chairs down, his pen tapping softly against a closed folder, eyes tracking every update Amira gave. When she asked for feedback, he only said, Keep going. This is your voice now. Let them hear it. There was no ego, no suggestion that he should take credit. And yet, something in his tone unsettled her more than the arrogance he used to carry. Because now he sounded proud, genuinely proud, of her, not what she delivered, but who she'd become. After the meeting, she stepped outside for air. Rian found her standing beneath the overhang, coffee in one hand, the other running along the smooth edge of the building's glass. You okay? Rian asked. Amira didn't answer right away. Do you ever feel like success isn't enough? She said finally. Rian tilted her head. You mean like you got everything you wanted, and yet something still doesn't feel settled? Amira looked at her. Exactly. Rian nodded slowly. Because the win didn't come with justice, it came with questions. Amira turned toward the skyline. I keep asking myself if forgiving him means I'm weak, or if holding on means I'm stuck. Rian sipped her coffee. I think strength isn't about choosing one. It's knowing you can stand in front of both and still be whole. Amira exhaled through her nose. I didn't expect him to change, but he has, Rian said. And now the decision's in your hands. That's the power. Not whether he wants you back, but whether you want to let someone see the version of you he never met. That landed hard, because it was true. Joran wasn't asking to rewrite their past. He was asking to meet her present, and maybe to earn a chance at their future. Back inside, Amira reviewed the upcoming rollout for Phase 3 of the campaign. She found herself writing differently, not mechanically, but personally. Less jargon, more honesty. It used to take hours for her to find the right voice. Now, it poured out in minutes. She didn't realize until halfway through the presentation notes that she'd stopped writing as the agency. She was writing like someone who believed in the brand, not just the companies. At 6 p.m., she was still in her office when Joran knocked softly. She looked up, expecting him to ask about the new deck. Instead, he held up a box. "Dinner," he said. "You missed lunch. Again." She raised an eyebrow. He stepped inside, careful, like always. "It's from Cadenza," he added. "The mushroom risotto." "You once said it reminded you of home." She leaned back, arms crossed. "So now you're watching my eating habits?" He smiled, but not playfully. "Just watching what matters." She didn't respond, but she didn't send him away either. They ate quietly in her office. 2 chairs pulled beside the window, a small table between them. The view was soft, Seattle lights flickering under a grey-blue sky. Halfway through the meal, Joran set down his fork. "I know you're still deciding." She looked at him. "I'm not pushing, I'm not rushing you, but I want to be honest about one thing." She waited. "I like who you are now. I liked who you were then. But this version of you, the one who walks in and commands a room like she invented it, that's who I missed out on." Amira looked down at her food. "I became her because you left." "I know. And part of me is scared that letting you in again means losing her." "You won't," he said. "Not if I have anything to say about it." She turned her head slightly, examining him under the low office lights. There was no pleading in his expression, no entitlement, just clarity, and it scared her, because part of her wanted to believe it, and the other part wanted to stay safe. She stood up, walked to her desk, and picked up a folder. "Here," she said, handing it to him. New language for the landing page, clean, purpose-driven, no fluff. He took it. Their fingers brushed, and this time she didn't pull away, but she didn't linger either. He nodded. "Thank you for the copy, for letting me sit across from you and not hate myself." She didn't reply. She walked back to the window, arms folded. "You once said silence was your protection," she said. "But I don't think it was. I think silence was your permission to disappear." He swallowed. "And now?" he asked quietly. "Now," she said, "you speak softer. But your presence is louder." That night, she went home and rewrote the entire intro to the campaign press release. She stripped out the company jargon, removed the buzzwords, and started with this: "We don't just sell solutions, we rebuild trust. And every rebuild starts with someone choosing to try again." The campaign went live on a Wednesday. No fireworks, no dramatic countdown, just a quiet upload, a press release, a rollout across channels with clean, stripped visuals and messaging that felt human. Amira didn't attend the launch watch party. She stayed in her office, headphones in, tracking back-end engagement numbers, studying feedback in real time. By 10 a.m., major tech blogs had picked it up. By noon, 3 clients requested expansion meetings. By 2 p.m., Voss and Ryden was trending. And by 5 p.m., every screen in the building lit up with an internal alert. All hands meeting. 5:30. Executive floor. Attendance requested. Amira didn't think much of it. Probably a board announcement. Maybe a pat-on-the-back speech. She gathered her notepad, her tablet, and walked in just before it started. What she didn't expect was this. The lights dimmed. A short recap video played. Then, silence. Joran stood at the front, no microphone, no script, just him. "I won't take much of your time," he began. "I just wanted to say something I should have said years ago." The room shifted. Dozens of eyes turned, but his didn't move. They stayed locked on Amira. "Most of you know the campaign that launched this morning," he continued. "It's already being called our best work in 5 years. And that's not because of luck. It's because we finally learned to sound like who we are and stop pretending to be who we think the market wants us to be." People nodded. Some smiled. "But the truth behind this isn't about branding," he said. "It's about leadership." He stepped down from the front slightly. No slides, no visuals. He stood still. "I've made a lot of decisions as CEO. Some smart, some strategic, and some that cost more than I can ever fully account for." Amira's heart slowed, just a little. "I want to publicly recognize the person who led us back to the heart of this company," Joran said. "She walked in after 2 years of silence, with every reason not to help us, and gave us her best anyway." People turned to her now. Amira stared at him. "She's the reason we're seeing this success. She's the reason this brand means something again. And she's the reason I remembered why we built this place in the first place." He paused. Not rushed, not dramatic, just real. Amira win. Silence. Then, applause. Not polite, not obligatory. Real, sincere. The kind of applause that fills a room when someone's respect is no longer a whisper. Amira didn't stand. She didn't smile. She nodded once, and in that moment, the weight that had been sitting on her chest for 2 years shifted, not gone, but moved. After the meeting, she stayed behind. Rian found her near the elevator. "You okay?" Amira nodded. "That was brave of him," Rian said. Amira looked up. "It was overdue, but still brave," Rian repeated. "He didn't have to say your name." "But he did." Amira didn't respond. She didn't know what to do with the feeling in her throat. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't satisfaction. It was something quieter, like a window she hadn't opened in a long time. She left the building late, walked 3 blocks to her favorite wine bar, sat alone, ordered something dry, and watched the rain run down the windows. Her phone buzzed. A message from a recruiter she used to admire. "Saw your campaign. We're expanding. Would love to bring you on board. Creative director role. Big move. Full ownership." She read it twice, then 3 more times, and just sat there, not smiling, not typing, just thinking. The next morning, she didn't bring it up. Not to Rian, not to her team, not to Joran. She worked, polished proposals, reviewed survey results, scheduled interviews for junior roles, and around noon, she found herself walking past Joran's office. He saw her. "Got a second?" he asked. She nodded, stepped inside. He closed the door behind her but kept distance. "I meant what I said yesterday." "I know. You looked surprised." "I was. I also know I never made you feel seen," he added. "So if yesterday helped repair even 1 layer of that, good." She studied him. "You've changed," he nodded, "because I lost the version of you who trusted me." She exhaled. "There's no going back, Joran. I'm not trying to go back." She tilted her head. "I want to build something forward, whatever you'd let that be." Her hands tightened around the folder she carried. He saw it. "You're holding something. Offer letter," she said quietly. "From another firm." His throat tightened. "Are you leaving?" "I haven't decided." She walked to the door, then stopped, looked back. "I didn't do this to get applause. I did it because I owed it to myself to prove I was never the problem." "You were the best part," he said. She nodded, then left. That night, Joran stood by the window in his penthouse. The rain returned. He held a glass of untouched scotch, watching headlights cut across the street. He didn't feel defeated, but he did feel exposed, because the woman he let walk away once had built wings while he was chasing shadows, and this time, she didn't need his permission to fly. Amira didn't go to the office Monday or Tuesday. She didn't call out, didn't send a formal notice. She just paused. After 2 years of building her brand, facing the man who betrayed her, leading a campaign that reshaped one of the most powerful companies in Seattle, she owed herself quiet. And in the quiet, everything felt louder. She spent the first morning in bed, wrapped in her oldest hoodie, watching the city blink through the grey haze outside her window. Her phone buzzed once. Rian, no pressure. Just checking in. Everything okay? She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Nothing else. It wasn't avoidance. It was preservation. By noon, she was walking through the Westwood district with a hot drink in one hand and her thoughts in the other. Seattle's edges softened in the rain. The city gave her cover, like it always had. She stopped by a small bookstore she used to visit, before everything changed. The same woman behind the counter greeted her. "Long time," she said. Amira smiled. "Yeah, you were always the one who liked second-hand poetry." "I still do." The woman handed her a worn book without asking what she needed. "You don't have to start over," she said. "Sometimes you just start again." That night, she met Yari at their favorite rooftop bar. It wasn't fancy, just a quiet overlook with string lights and affordable wine. They sat under a heated lamp, shoulders close, coats pulled tight. Yari sipped her drink. "So, you disappeared. I needed to think, and I got a job offer." Yari raised her brows. "Big agency," Amira added. "Creative director, full autonomy, resources, national reach, and..." Amira stared at her glass. "I don't know if I want it." Yari tilted her head. "Because of Joran." Amira shook her head. "Yes. And no." Yari waited. Amira continued. "I thought this campaign would be closure, that proving I could succeed in the space where I was broken would feel like the final chapter, but it doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a question." Yari leaned in. "What's the question? If I walk away now, is that strength or fear of facing what's still open?" Yari was quiet for a beat, then said, "Here's what I know. You're not that girl who needed his validation. You're not even the woman who needed his apology." Amira's throat tightened. "You're the one who got back up, built a name without shortcuts, and still walked in like Grace in heels." A tear slid down Amira's cheek before she could stop it. Yari reached for her hand. "So whatever you choose, do it for you. Not for revenge, not for romance, for your peace." The next morning, Amira opened her email. The offer from the agency still sat at the top. She hovered over it, then minimized the screen. She wasn't done listening to herself yet. She returned to her apartment's rooftop that evening. The air was cooler now. Winter was on its way. She stood at the edge, the city below pulsing gently. Her phone buzzed. "Joran, I don't know where you are, and I won't ask. Just wanted you to know, everything's quieter without you here. Not because you made noise, because you were the center of the room, even when no one noticed." "Jay," she didn't reply, but she reread it 3 times, then tucked the phone into her pocket, lifted her chin to the sky, and exhaled. The next morning, she finally called the agency. "Thank you for the offer," she said, voice steady. "But I'm going to pass." "Any particular reason?" the woman on the line asked. Amira smiled. "I have unfinished business here." The energy in the building shifted the moment Amira walked in. Not loud, not obvious, but everyone felt it. She was dressed in a forest green turtleneck, black slacks, gold hoop earrings that framed her jaw. Simple, commanding, unapologetic. Some people greeted her. Some stayed quiet, still unsure how to read the woman who had somehow become both the story and the storyteller of the company's revival. Amira walked through the glass doors like she owned time, because, after everything, she did. Rian was the first to approach. "You're back." Amira smiled faintly. "I am. Do I want to ask what you decided?" "You'll find out by next quarter." They exchanged a look. Then a hug. Short, real. "You were missed," Rian said. "I didn't disappear," Amira replied. "I was deciding how to show up." Inside her office, everything was as she left it. Her chair pushed in, her files untouched, the plant she nearly killed 6 months ago still fighting to stay alive. She sat down, opened her inbox, started again. Not from the beginning, from right where she paused. That afternoon, Joran stopped by. No knock, just a light tap on the doorframe. She looked up. Their eyes met. "I'm glad you're back," he said. "Are you?" "Yes. But not because I need you to finish anything." She waited. "I'm glad because this place feels clearer when you're in it." Amira leaned back in her chair. "So, what now?" He stepped inside, hands in his pockets. "I don't know what the end of this campaign looks like, but I know I don't want it to be the end of whatever this is." She didn't respond. He continued, "I'm not asking for an answer, just honesty." She stood, walked to the window, then turned. "I'm not scared of loving someone again, Joran. I'm scared of disappearing inside someone again." He nodded. "You won't. I promise." "You can't promise that." "You're right," he said. "So let me offer something else." She crossed her arms. He took a breath. "I'll walk beside you, even if that means never touching your hand. Even if that means being near you is the closest I'll ever get again." Amira didn't speak. Her eyes softened. And that said more than words. The following day, she led a team session about the brand's next evolution. She was sharp, focused, composed. But something was different. She wasn't building distance anymore. She was building presence. Even her pauses had power now. When the session ended, Joran stayed behind. "Dinner?" he asked. She considered it. Then, "I'll let you know." That night, she sat in bed, laptop open, fingers hovering above the keys. She didn't type. She thought about forgiveness, about growth, about how healing wasn't linear, and how sometimes redemption doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means building something honest in spite of it. If someone betrayed your trust but returned changed, genuinely changed, would you give them another chance? Or would you close the door, no matter how softly they knock? Tell us in the comments. And if you believe that healing is sometimes louder than heartbreak, tap like, subscribe, and join the Mr. Charles Stories community, where second chances aren't fantasy, they're earned. The invitation arrived on a Thursday morning. Cream envelope, embossed seal. Inside, a handwritten card with the Voss and Ryden insignia and a line in bold. Recognition dinner, honoring the voice behind the rebrand. Amira blinked at it for a long moment. She wasn't the type who craved spotlight, but this wasn't about craving. This was about claiming. That night, Rian stopped by her office with a mischievous grin. "You better not ghost this." Amira raised a brow. "It's unnecessary." "Unnecessary?" "You pulled this company out of PR quicksand. You gave it language. You're the reason we're not drowning in investor panic." Amira smiled. "I was doing my job." "No, you were doing his job," Rian said, "and making it better." Amira exhaled. "Still not going to stand at a podium and pat myself on the back." "You won't have to," Rian said. "Everyone else will do it for you." Friday night arrived fast. The event space was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling glass, warm lighting, music low enough to feel intentional. Amira wore a sleek, fitted black dress with a high neckline and gold detailing at the collar. Understated, unapologetic. People turned when she walked in, some with admiration, some with curiosity, a few with jealousy they tried to mask. But no one questioned why she was there. She had become the kind of woman who didn't ask for rooms. She simply entered and made them hers. Joran arrived late, on purpose. He didn't want to draw attention. He didn't want to make her presence feel smaller by standing next to it. He stood back, nursing a drink, watching her move through the room with ease. She was speaking to a small circle of brand partners, laughing, teaching, owning. She didn't need him to complete her spotlight, and that, more than anything, made him love her more. The CEO of a major client stepped up during the short presentation. "I've worked with firms all over the country," he said, "but I've rarely seen a voice so calm, so exact, and so emotionally intelligent. He gestured toward Amira. She didn't rebrand a company. She reminded it what it sounded like when it told the truth. Applause, not forced. Amira stood, took the mic only briefly. "I didn't come back here to fix anything," she said. "I came back to see who I was, now that I wasn't broken." Silence. Then a wave of clapping again, this time louder, longer. Even Joran smiled, because she wasn't just healed, she was whole. After the crowd faded, he found her near the balcony. The city lights framed her like she belonged to them. "You were brilliant," he said. She turned, a glass of sparkling water in her hand. "Thank you. I mean it. You didn't flinch, didn't shrink." "I didn't have to," she replied. "Not anymore." He nodded, then paused. "I want to tell you something, but I'll only say it if you want to hear it." She stared at him. "I'm listening," she said. He stepped closer. "After this campaign wraps, I'm stepping down as CEO." Amira blinked. "You're what?" "I'm moving into advisory, strategy only. The board's been ready. I was the one who kept holding on." "Why now?" "Because I'm done building things I don't believe in." She watched him carefully. "And because," he added, "I want to build something real, not from a corner office, but from the ground up, maybe, beside someone I trust." Her expression didn't shift, but her breathing did. Softer, measured, like a decision was being weighed, and the fear around it was finally beginning to lift. The night ended without a kiss, without a promise. But when Joran reached for her coat, she let him hold it longer than necessary before slipping it on. And when she walked past him toward the exit, she looked back, not as a woman broken by betrayal, but as one who finally had something to consider and nothing to prove. Monday came with its usual rhythm: fast meetings, inbox overload, coffee that didn't hit right. But the energy in the building was different now. People greeted Amira first. They leaned in, listened more, paused before interrupting, not because she demanded fear, but because she now moved through rooms with a presence no one could deny. She wasn't chasing influence anymore. She was the influence. During a morning alignment meeting, the same regional director who once questioned her messaging approach now quoted her language verbatim. "Emotion equals memory," he said confidently. Amira sat across the table, arms folded. He didn't credit her, but she didn't need him to. Rian caught her eye, smirking. Progress doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits across from you repeating your words without realizing you've already won. Later that day, she was called into a surprise meeting with the board chair. He didn't waste time. "We'd like to offer you something more permanent." Amira blinked. "Define more permanent." Brand partner, C-level, optional equity, seat at the table. She didn't answer right away. She was flattered, but she also knew what power came with hidden strings. "I'll need to review the structure," she said calmly. "I don't do silent seats." He chuckled. "Didn't think you would." She stood, shook his hand. "Thanks for seeing me." "No," he replied. "Thanks for making us look." By midweek, her inbox was full of invites, panels, consulting offers, features. They didn't want the woman who left 2 years ago. They wanted the one who came back and rewrote the rules. Still, with every invite that came, she felt the same quiet question echoing inside her. And what about Joran? She saw him less that week. He gave her space, didn't hover, didn't corner her in hallways. Only small moments. An offered coffee mug in the break room, a warm nod in passing. Once, a glance that held too long in a glass reflection. He didn't push, and somehow that made her want to step closer. On Friday, as the office emptied for the weekend, Amira sat alone at her desk, reviewing the final week of deliverables. A knock. Joran. He leaned in. "I heard about the partner offer," he said. "You deserve it." "I haven't accepted yet." He hesitated. "Are you afraid they'll expect you to stay silent?" "No," she said. "I'm afraid of staying somewhere just because I earned it." He nodded slowly, then offered, "Would it be easier if I weren't here?" She blinked. "Is that your way of quitting twice?" He gave a small laugh. "I mean it, Amira. If my presence keeps you from moving freely, say the word. She stood, walked around her desk. I don't want you to leave. He looked up. But I also don't want to make decisions that orbit around you, she added. I've been my own world for too long. You still are, he said. I just hope I get to stay in your sky, even if I'm not the sun. She stared at him, soft, still, then said, you don't have to orbit, but if we ever share the same space again, it'll be because we both chose it, not because one of us got pulled in. He didn't speak. He simply reached for her hand, held it, then let it go. No pressure, just presence. That night, Amira didn't go home. She drove to the harbor instead, sat in her car, watched the water move. No music, no calls, just her thoughts. She whispered to the steering wheel, I'm not scared anymore. Then she smiled, because it was true. She wasn't afraid of falling. She was only afraid of forgetting who she became while learning how to fly. And that part was hers to protect. The email came at 6:42 a.m. No subject line. Just a name Amira hadn't seen since her first year in branding, Corinne Mitchell, founder, Foundry and Feather Creative Group. She blinked at the screen, still holding her toothbrush in one hand, her robe knotted loosely around her waist. Her eyes skimmed the message. Saw your campaign, watched your keynote. I've been following your work for years, quietly. We're ready to open our East Coast studio. I want your name on the glass door. Partner. National Creative Director, salary optional, equity non-negotiable. Let's talk. She stood frozen in the bathroom for a full minute, then whispered, oh. By the time she arrived at the office, the buzz of her inbox was already a hum. The offer had been forwarded to 2 publications, leaked somehow. Not the full details, but the headline read clear. The voice behind Voss's comeback offered national creative role. Her phone vibrated non-stop. Her agency page views skyrocketed. 3 junior designers stopped her in the hallway with wide eyes. Is it true? Is that you in the article? She nodded once, said nothing else. Joran found out around noon. Rian told him, gently. She got an offer. His breath caught. Where? New York. He closed his laptop slowly. Is she taking it? Rian hesitated. I don't know. He looked past her, toward the hallway leading to Amira's office, then quietly said, if she says yes, I'll still be proud. Rian stared at him for a long beat, then said, you know, the old you would have guilted her into staying. I'm not the old me. No, Rian said, but you still look at her like she's the only thing that ever felt right. Amira sat alone in the strategy room later that day, lights low, curtain drawn halfway. She held the offer printout in her hand, folded once down the middle. The numbers were impressive. The role was powerful. The freedom? Undeniable. She'd never have to explain herself again. Never be tied to old decisions. She could walk into a new space as the full version of herself. No ghosts, no memories, no complicated history. But that idea didn't bring comfort. It brought tension. Because sometimes, the thing that sounds like freedom feels a lot like running. Joran knocked gently. She didn't look up. I heard, he said. She slid the paper face down on the table. News travels fast. You deserve it. She nodded. I won't stop you, he said. I didn't ask you to. I know, he said. But I want you to know, this time, I won't make it about me. She finally looked at him. He walked in slowly. Sat across from her, no folder, no laptop, just his hands folded on the table. I'm not going to ask what you're going to do, he added. I'm only going to say this. She waited. You don't owe Seattle anything. You don't owe me anything. But if there's a part of you that's still wondering if love and purpose can live in the same city, don't silence it because you're afraid. She stared at him, and for the first time in a long time, she felt it. This man doesn't want to hold me back. He wants to walk beside me, if I let him. She left work early, took the long way home, stopped by a pier she hadn't visited in years, Watched the ferries drift across the water like quiet choices. She thought about every version of herself. The girl who stayed late to prove she belonged. The woman who disappeared with her dignity. The fighter who returned with calm. And the creative who now had doors opening from coast to coast. She sat on the bench until the sun started to dim. Then she reached for her phone. Typed a message. "Can we talk tomorrow? No work. Just you and me." She hovered. Then hit send. To Joran. He replied within seconds. Anytime. Anywhere. And for once she didn't feel like she was walking toward uncertainty. She felt like she was walking toward choice. Her choice. Saturday morning. 10:06 a.m. The cafe was quiet, an indie corner spot tucked into Queen Anne Hill, all wood-grain shelves and the smell of roasted cardamom. Joran got there first. He didn't wear a suit. Dark jeans. A soft navy pullover. No watch. No armor. He sat by the window, hands wrapped around a ceramic cup. Not checking his phone. Not scanning the door. Just waiting. When Amira walked in, she wasn't wearing her weekday shell either. Loose cream sweater, dark curls pinned back, no makeup, no guarded eyes. But her presence, still sharp, still entirely hers. She slid into the seat across from him. No greeting, no small talk. Instead, she asked, "Do you regret it?" He met her eyes. Every day, she nodded once, like she expected that, but she wasn't done. "Do you regret me?" That took him longer. He sat back slightly. "No," he said, "because if I hadn't fallen for you, I wouldn't have found the best parts of myself." Her gaze dropped to the table, then rose again. "And yet, you gave the press Alina. I gave the press an illusion. You gave me silence." He closed his eyes for a second. "I panicked," he admitted. "I thought choosing you would make me weak. That it would blur the lines between leadership and love. It wouldn't have," she said softly. "It would have made you human." A long pause stretched between them. Outside, the sky began to grey. Inside, warmth pulsed low from the floor vents. Neither reached for their coffee. Then Joran said, "When you left, I told myself I deserved it, that you would have left anyway once you saw the cracks." Amira tilted her head. "You didn't think I saw them already?" He gave a small laugh. "You were always 2 steps ahead." "No," she said. "I was 2 steps with you, but you stopped walking." They sat quietly for a moment. Then Amira leaned forward. "This offer in New York, it's everything I once thought I wanted. Autonomy, recognition, equity. A fresh page." "Then take it," he said, even though it made his voice strain. "But here's the thing," she said. "I don't know if I want to be remembered for what I build alone, or for what I build that lasts." He blinked. "Are you asking if I still want to build something with you?" "I'm asking if we ever started." That hit. He looked out the window for a second, then turned back. "I think we both mistook silence for safety, but real building requires noise, conflict, mess." She nodded. "And rebuilding?" He swallowed. "Rebuilding requires grace, and a shared desire to try again." The waitress came to refill their cups. Neither touched them. Joran finally leaned in. "I don't want you to stay in Seattle because of me. You're not that powerful anymore," she said, half smiling. He smiled too. "I want you to stay because this city still has space for your joy." She grew quiet, then finally said, "If I stay, it's not for you." He nodded. "It's with me," he finished. She didn't answer with words. She reached into her bag, pulled out a folded piece of paper, the job offer, and slid it across the table. "I told Corinne I'd call after the weekend. Do you want me to tell you what to do?" Joran asked. "No," she said. "I want you to be the kind of man who makes the choice obvious." They sat there until noon. No decisions, no declarations, but a shift, a beginning. Joran stood first, helped her into her coat. They walked outside together. She didn't let him take her hand, but she didn't walk ahead of him either. They moved side by side, not rushed, not held back, just together. Later that evening, Amira stood at her apartment window, the city stretching out before her. She opened her phone, scrolled past the offer, past the articles. She stopped at a photo, a campaign snapshot, one she never shared. It was from her first month at Voss and Ryden. She and Joran standing side by side, half smiles, a little awkward, a little electric. She looked at the photo for a long moment, then whispered, "That wasn't the beginning." She looked at her reflection in the glass. "This is..." The email sat in Amira's inbox. Subject line, "Final call." Offer letter expires in 12 hours. The cursor blinked on her screen. Her apartment was silent except for the quiet hum of the city below. Night poured in through the tall windows, soft shadows brushing against the floor. She had reread the contract 5 times. It was everything she once dreamed of: equity, leadership, and full creative control at a respected East Coast agency. No ghosts, no Voss, no heartbeats tied to office doorways. But why couldn't she click accept? Her phone buzzed once. A text from her mother, "Proud of you always. Whatever you choose, make sure it makes you peaceful." Amira exhaled. Peace. What did that look like? Was it finally being in a space where her name came first? Or was it rebuilding something that once felt like home, even if it meant starting from scratch? The doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, Joran stood there, suit jacket off, hair slightly tousled, hands in his coat pockets. "I figured you wouldn't sleep either," he said. She didn't move aside at first. "What do you want, Joran?" He hesitated. "I want to ask you something, and if you say no, I'll leave." She raised an eyebrow. "Say it." He met her gaze fully. "Don't leave tomorrow." She folded her arms. "You think this is about you?" "No," he said. "I think this is about us, or what could be us, if we stop letting fear decide everything." She leaned against the doorframe. "You're not the same man I worked under." He nodded. "I hope not. You used to hold everything close, hide behind perfect strategy and measured tone. And you used to whisper into the dark, hoping someone heard you." That made her blink. He stepped closer. "I heard you, Amira. I just didn't believe I deserved what you offered." Silence. "And now?" she asked. "Now I don't just believe it, I want to earn it." She finally stepped back. Let him in. They didn't speak much at first. She made tea. He paced by the window. Then she turned the question on him. "What's stopping you from moving on?" He looked over. "I did move on. I moved into a world where success was cold, where every win echoed. And I'm tired of echoes." They sat across from each other, steam curling from their cups. "I'm not the woman who waited for you anymore," Amira said. "I'm not asking her to come back," Joran replied. "I'm asking the woman in front of me what she wants." She looked down at her tea. "I want to be brave again." He didn't speak. So she added, "Not just brave in business, brave in love, brave in letting someone try." Then she stood, walked to her laptop, paused before the screen. Her finger hovered over the accept button. Then, slowly, she closed the tab. She turned to Joran. "I'm not saying yes to you. I'm saying yes to giving this city one more chance to show me who I can be." He smiled. "That's more than I hoped for." She arched a brow. "Don't let me regret it." "I won't. Don't say it. Show it." The next day she sent Corin a short message. "Thank you for the opportunity. I've decided to pursue another path. Wishing you all the best. Amira." She shut her laptop. The sky was blue outside her window, and for the first time in years, her chest didn't feel heavy. It felt open. Monday morning came quietly. No press releases, no long meetings, just movement, subtle, steady change. Joran didn't say anything to the team about Amira's decision to stay. He didn't need to. Her presence said enough. But what surprised people wasn't her staying. It was him changing. He showed up to design meetings early. He sat in the back, listened more than he spoke. When ideas clashed, he asked questions instead of closing discussions. And when Amira spoke, He looked directly at her, not through her, not around her, at her. Rian noticed first. "You trained him," she whispered one afternoon. Amira didn't smile. "He trained himself," she replied. "I just stopped waiting." That Friday, Amira got a message. Subject, Tuesday, 7 p.m. No suits, no slides, just conversation. A location pin followed, small rooftop restaurant downtown. She stared at it for a while, didn't reply. But on Tuesday, she showed up. The restaurant wasn't loud. String lights hung above a wooden deck. A jazz trio played softly by the railing. Joran waited at a corner table. No jacket, sleeves rolled, hair tousled by the wind. He stood when she arrived. "You look free," he said. She raised an eyebrow. That wasn't a compliment before. It is now. They sat, ordered wine, talked like strangers who once knew each other's silences. No questions about work, no awkward circling, just moments. Amira set her napkin down. "So, what is this?" "A dinner," he said. "Don't play coy. That never worked on me." He laughed. "Okay. This is me showing up without hiding behind progress reports. And what do you want from it?" He didn't flinch. "Time, and whatever honesty you're willing to share." She leaned back. "I don't want grand gestures, Joran. I want consistency." He nodded. "I don't want promises. I want presence." He nodded again. "I want to be heard in quiet, not just seen in public." His voice softened. "I hear you now." She tilted her head. "Do you?" He didn't respond immediately. Then, "I used to think love was something you offered after you'd earned perfection. But you taught me it's what you give while you're becoming better." That made her pause. Her guard lowered just a little. They walked the city afterward, past familiar corners, unfamiliar stillness. Joran stopped outside a bookstore. "Every Thursday," he said, pointing to the shop, "you'd sneak out during lunch and come back with a new read." Amira looked surprised. "You remembered that?" "I was always watching. I just didn't always understand the value of what I saw." Outside her apartment building, they paused. "I'm not asking to come up," he said. "I'm asking if I can show up again this week." She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "Wednesday, 8:30. We'll walk." And with that, she turned and disappeared behind the door. Joran didn't text the next day, or the day after that, but on Wednesday at 8:28, she stepped out and saw him waiting, hoodie, coffee in hand, quiet smile on his face. They walked for 90 minutes. No agenda, no confession, just peace. By the end of the month, she found herself smiling more often, not because of him, but because of herself, because she was allowing joy to be simple again, not earned, not forced, just chosen. And he wasn't replacing what he broke. He was watering what she grew in his absence. One morning, she arrived early for a strategy session and found a folder on her desk, handwritten label, "For when you're ready." Inside was a single page, a list of places, and favorite tea shop in Kyoto and jazz club in New Orleans and Garden Trail in Sedona bookstore. In Lisbon and one line at the bottom, "None of them matter unless you say yes." She sat with it for a while, then folded it, put it back in the folder, and tucked it in her bag. She didn't speak about it, but 2 days later, she placed a sticky note on Joran's door. "I still like mint tea." Thursday? No signature. He smiled when he saw it, because it was the first time she reached out, not just reached back. The pitch room was full. Not of noise, of breath, the kind of breath that hangs right before something big. The walls glowed softly with the agency's signature blue lighting. Presentation decks flicked across the screen one last time. Team members whispered final notes. Rian adjusted the branding boards near the glass wall. Joran stood still. But his eyes, they kept drifting to Amira. She was across the room, calm, confident, exactly where she belonged, not beside him, but equal to him. The client walked in, representatives from Solix Media, a multi-billion-dollar company ready to rebrand its future. They took their seats. Amira stepped forward. "Thank you for being here," she began. No nerves, no pause, just clarity. "This is more than a campaign. It's a story about belief, in your audience, in your message, in yourselves." She clicked. A slide showed a simple phrase: "Real isn't risky. It's required." The room leaned in. Joran watched her lead. Not with noise, with presence. He noticed something else too. She no longer glanced his way for reassurance. She didn't need it, and strangely, that made him feel peaceful, because this wasn't about regaining power. It was about releasing it. The presentation ran for 42 minutes. At minute 36, Amira shifted from strategy to vision. Her voice lowered. "This isn't about erasing what came before," she said. "It's about evolving, about saying, we see the cracks. We still believe the light can shine through." The Solix CEO nodded slowly. The CFO whispered to her team. And when the final slide landed, the applause was honest. Not performative, not polite, just earned. The clients left impressed. The team left buzzing. And when the room cleared, only 2 people remained. Joran and Amira. She started unplugging the HDMI cord. He stepped closer. "You were brilliant." She gave a small smile. "So, were they—" He nodded. "Walk with me?" She looked at her watch. Then, 10 minutes. They took the side stairs to the rooftop. The sky was soft, painted in gold and lavender. The breeze moved gently, brushing past like a familiar ghost. They stood near the edge. Quiet. Close. Then Joran turned. "I never knew what love looked like until I watched you love yourself." Amira looked at him, surprised. "You always knew how to hold space for others," he added. "But now, you hold it for yourself too." She didn't reply right away, but her hand brushed lightly against the railing. Then his. Their fingers didn't touch. "Not yet." "I don't want to ask you to stay," he said. "Good," she replied. "Because I didn't come back to be asked. I came to decide." Joran let out a quiet breath. "And what have you decided?" She turned toward him. "I'm not waiting for you to prove anything, Joran." He nodded. "I know. I'm also not handing you a blank slate." He nodded again. "You shouldn't." "But I am." She paused, willing to see what we can build without pretending the past didn't exist. He looked up at her, hopeful, honest, grounded. "Then let's stop rebuilding. Let's start fresh." She reached into her bag, pulled out the folder he gave her. "I circled 2 of the cities," she said. "One for work, one for rest." He looked inside. Lisbon, Sedona. He laughed softly. "Balance? Or at least, an attempt." She stepped back. "We'll go together. But I book my own hotel, my own flight. And if you're late to dinner once I walk out." He raised a hand, mock serious. "Understood." Before they left the roof, he reached out. Not for her hand, but for her gaze. "Amira?" She looked at him. "I didn't fall back in love with you." Her brow lifted. "I fell in love with who you became." She tilted her head. "And I'd like to learn who else you're becoming, if you'll let me." She smiled then. Not the smile from 2 years ago. A new one, full of choice, power, grace. "Then let's find out," she said. And finally, their fingers touched. Not because they needed to hold on, but because they were ready to walk. Sedona was quiet. Not silent, just grounded. The red rocks didn't shout. They simply stood. Steady, ancient, unmoved by history. Amira stood at the window of her boutique hotel suite, sipping mint tea. She'd arrived a day before Joran, on purpose. She wanted space. And when he texted, landed, no rush, she felt something strange, safe. They met that evening near a trailhead. No makeup, no suits, just hiking shoes and water bottles. The sun dipped low as they walked. "I used to think love was a sprint," Amira said, half laughing. Joran glanced over. "And now I think it's a long walk, sometimes uphill, sometimes quiet." but better when both people are facing the same direction. He nodded. I used to think love meant rescuing someone, he said. Now I think it's honoring how they rescued themselves. They walked until stars began to peek through the horizon. Dinner was at a small open-air cafe tucked into the hillside. They didn't talk about the company, or the board, or branding. They talked about old teachers, songs they liked, what childhood felt like. Did you always want to lead a company? She asked, slicing into her grilled vegetables. No, he said. I wanted to build something that outlived me. And now, he shrugged. I want to build something I'm proud to live with. She smiled. Good answer. After dinner, they walked back slowly. She paused at a bench overlooking the cliffs. He followed. They sat. Below, the world stretched out, raw and honest. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. When you left, what was the thing that broke you most? She didn't hesitate. You didn't say goodbye. He closed his eyes. I was scared. I was too. But I still deserved a sentence. He turned to her. I didn't know how to handle the weight of you. That's the thing, Joran. You weren't supposed to handle me. You were supposed to hold me. Silence stretched. But it didn't ache. It settled, like dust finding ground. She stood. He followed. At her door, they paused. She touched his wrist lightly. You're not who you were, I know. But don't forget what it cost others for you to grow. I won't. She nodded once, stepped inside, and closed the door gently. He stood outside for a long time, then walked away with peace in his chest, not urgency. 3 months later, the Lisbon photos hit the company's Slack channel. Amira and Joran standing beneath a mural, holding matching coffees. The caption, co-creation control, storytelling done right. No announcement, no titles, no explanations, just presence. That Monday, Rian walked into Amira's office. You seem lighter. Amira looked up. I think I forgave myself. For what? For trusting the wrong version of someone, and for thinking that made me wrong. Rian smiled. And now, I just trust myself. The rest can follow, or not. One afternoon, Joran passed by her open door. She looked up. Hey. He leaned on the frame. Hey. She gestured to the extra chair. He sat. They didn't need to speak. Not today. The silence didn't ask for anything. It simply allowed, and that was enough. Sometimes, the loudest heartbreak doesn't come from shouting. It comes from silence, from someone not saying goodbye, from walking into an office and realizing you were erased like a meeting on a calendar. But here's what Amira showed us. Healing doesn't wait for an apology. It builds anyway. It grows in quiet spaces. It stands tall in boardrooms. And eventually, it walks back in. Not for revenge, but for respect. Maybe you've been in her shoes. Maybe someone turned love into a headline and left you to rewrite the story alone. If that's you, breathe. You didn't lose your worth. They just couldn't carry the weight of it. And maybe, just maybe, the version of you that returns isn't the same one they left behind. It's stronger, wiser, unapologetic. If you've ever healed in silence and found your voice again, drop A in the comments. And if you believe that real love doesn't erase the past, it learns from it, then hit that like button, subscribe, and join our community of powerful hearts who know the difference between being forgotten and choosing to be unforgettable. This is Mr. Charles Stories, where every heartbreak has a purpose, and every second chance begins with truth.